Alright guys, so I've had the PSVR headset now for a few days, had some more time with it, so I thought I'd do a proper first impressions video. I have to preface everything that I'm going to say with, holy shit balls, this is fun. It's a lot of fucking fun. It does what it sets out to do. You know, the main selling point of virtual reality is that sense of presence within a game world, that immersion, and it really gets that done. The technology is ready to give you that sense of presence in a game world. But in order to get the best out of it, you do sort of have to meet it halfway. You've got to meet this technology halfway. Understand that it's the first wave of this tech and there are certain limitations and there are certain things that you can do to just help make your experience to be the smoothest it can be. So, for example, the camera's only got a certain field of view. So if you move outside of that, you're going to break the game. If you turn around and the camera can't see a controller in your hand, you're going to lose the tracking on it. So it's things like that. Just be mindful of the limits of the technology and you will get the best out of it. So quickly to go over kind of bullet points, the visuals that I've talked about before. Yeah, the lower resolution screen doesn't seem to bother me. I think they've made the right decision with going with a screen that's got a very high refresh rate. And also I think it's OLED. It's certainly got very dark blacks. That really high contrast, those really rich colours really help make the game world seem more tangible, more real, so that helps as well. So I think overall they've made the right decision. Screen technology is improving all the time, of course. The next wave of this tech is going to have higher resolutions and everything's going to be improved, so you know it's on its way there. I don't think this is going to be the headset that convinces the masses. I'm pointing down here because of course I have it down here. Now the reason I don't think this is going to be the headset that convinces the masses is because to the average gamer, to the average person, it's a little bit awkward because of wires, mainly because of wires. I mean, there's a lot of wireage going on here, not just the stuff that actually the hookups on the back of the console that can be hidden away. The wire leading actually to the headset, of course, and that constantly trails down around you, and you need to get the right placement for that. So I've kind of thought that just slung over the shoulder seems to work pretty well. Although again, you've got to be mindful of where you're seated as well. So you've really got to pay attention to the setup, how your seating is, you know, the comfort, the support, the freedom of movement, and where you can basically secure the wire to kind of dangle onto that isn't going to get in the way. You can play with it in front of you like this as well, of course. Coming out the front might be good too. I've currently been doing all my VR gaming sat down. There are some standing games, games that can be played standing on PSVR. I haven't played those yet. So all my games have been sat down. So currently I've kind of had it just, yeah, slung over the back of my shoulder like this. But it can be a little bit awkward, you know, not just the placement of it, but putting it on as well. Obviously there's moving tech here, there's lots of fragile stuff. You've got to really respect the tech. That's one piece of advice you need to know about this is respect the tech. There's a lot of breakables in this thing, so find somewhere safe to keep it, and also when you're putting it on, making sure you're pressing the buttons to properly move things around when you're adjusting the positioning, and being gentle with it and all the rest of it. They say under 11s shouldn't play with this, and that's for good reason, because it's going to be hard to get a very young child to be mindful enough of being careful with this stuff, because yeah, the wire, I mean, it's only as strong as its weakest part, you know. I don't know how good Sony's kind of aftermarket service is, especially with second-hand units. Are they going to be able to replace lenses or anything else that breaks? We don't know yet. I haven't looked into that. Maybe they are. I don't think I've heard a lot about it, but it's only as strong as its weakest part, so there's another kind of limitation to it. Or just something you have to be realistic about. I can't really say there's any out and out negatives about this thing. I don't think it'd be fair to say that these issues are negatives per se. It's more just stuff you've got to be mindful about and be realistic about. You know, the technology that is required currently to give you this type of experience has its certain considerations. There's no point being disappointed with the resolution. It's going to get better in future iterations. I've jumped on now because there's already a whole lot of fun stuff to do with it. One of the cool things I'm finding with this as well is it's giving me that new experience feeling, you know, from gaming that I haven't felt for a while. That I don't really think I've felt since the Rock Band games, the game Guitar Hero games first came out. maybe I'm just a peripherals gamer. I like toys, maybe, but just that new feeling, you know. I think a lot of the main releases, the AAA titles at least in gaming, feel a little bit hegemonic. Is that the right word? Probably not. You know, we suffer. A lot of people are suffering from sandbox fatigue. So you have these massive games that are just basically sandbox adventure games. So it's all become a little bit formulaic. Obviously, you can go to the indie market and there's a lot of variety there. But the VR headset for me personally has been kind of an antidote to that kind of sandbox fatigue. You know, I've found myself shying away from some of the traditional games on recent consoles because they're so sprawling, they're so huge in scope, and that obviously can be a lot of fun, and I have had a lot of fun with those games, but one after the other of a similar kind of format has become a little bit tiresome, I think, or at least you need a break from it. And it's given me that break in such a good way. It's really fun. So, talked about the visuals already quite a lot. The audio, 3D audio works really well. Now, I hadn't realised this at first, but 3D audio is nothing to do with the actual headphones you're using. It's to do with the programming of the sound. So, just like when you move your head with the headset and you physically move closer objects in the game world because it's because of head tracking, just like that, the same works with sound. So, for example, in the Ocean Descent, you're in this cage and you go down into the sea, and there's a little computer unit on the side of the cage. You can move down really close to it and really get a good look at the detail on this computer unit. But also the beeping that it makes gets louder as you move closer to it as well. So that's another programming trick. I mean, it's down to the software developers to make games for VR from the ground up, and that's when you'll get the best out of it. And they're already doing that, of course, but long may it continue, because there's some really great little tricks that they can do to help with that feeling of presence within a game world. For example, the gameplay video that I uploaded the other night was Robot Rescue, a simple little platformer, just one level, as a kind of demo, proof of concept, on VR, the Playroom. And yeah, someone left a comment saying that, you know, I'd expect really VR games to be first person, that's what I want from games. And most of the games I have played on VR so far have been first person, but this platformer has shown to me that there's a place for that kind of game in VR as well. You still get that sense of presence, and the developers have done certain things to make you feel like you are there, even though you're not literally the character that you're controlling in the game. So you've got a controller, you can see you control it in the game, which is brilliant, and that has various interactions with the game as well. Obviously it's motion tracked, so you can see that, that's nice. But you're actually controlling with the thumbsticks a little robot character that's running around this little Mario style world. And Nintendo needs to get back on board with VR. They tried it with the Virtual Boys, kinda, I know, not different thing, but basically they tried something. They need to get back on board. Fucking Mario World like this, that I played Robot Rescue in VR, would be mind-blowing. But to get back to what I was saying, even though you're controlling a little robot character that you're moving around, you still feel placed within the world, because in this game specifically, you are a floating robot that is controlling the other robot. And if you look down at a certain angle, you cast a shadow. So your floating robot casts a shadow, and when you move your head around, the shadow moves with you. Genius, little detail that helps make you feel like you're there. So it's down to the programmers to make games from the ground up, and we're seeing that happen already. The controllers work great, definitely work better in a low light room. I have noticed a little bit of tracking issues in very bright rooms, but that's to be expected. It's light tracked. So again, respect the technology, meet it halfway, get your setup right, and just help the game take you into these experiences. You know, if you sat there trying to picket it or break it, then you will picket it and break it. But allow yourself to be taken. You know, when you watch a film, the best film experiences are where you're just taken by the story and you just let it impress you. And the same is with VR. Obviously it's interactive, you are part of the equation, and in that respect you need to meet the technology halfway. I said that already, I guess. When friends play it as well, you really need to stress that certain ways of playing, you need to make them aware of certain things, like the wire. You know, not everybody's going to be as conscious of this wire that could be your weakest point if it gets pulled at. You know, so just help them play it safely so nothing's going to get broken. And maybe explain a couple of things about the movement in there as well. It's not always obvious to people the freedom that they've got in VR. For example, in Robot Rescue, there's one point where you're going through a tight kind of tunnel and you can physically headbutt bits of the rock off and it breaks. Another little programming trick that helps you feel immersed. And I discovered this and found it really charming. When my friend played it and he was going through this tunnel and I could see he was trying to dodge the rocks because they were too close, I said, mate, you can just nut them and they'll break. Obviously, he couldn't see me doing this action. And he was actually trying to make his little robot character jump up and headbutt the rocks. Because in a normal game, that's what you would do from my instruction is, oh, just headbutt the rocks. And no, not your character. Literally, you need to headbutt the rocks. Just one little example there. It's not always obvious how much freedom you've got in VR for everybody. So maybe people need a little bit of help with getting used to this way of playing. I think it's certainly something that is best played for short bursts. I don't think you're going to be playing VR for hours and hours on end, like you do with traditional games. You know, because there's more movement. There's potential there for neck strain, neck ache. There's a lot more movement, of course, of your head, and you're potentially not going to have as much back support. Of course, I would recommend that when you're getting set up to play VR, try and make sure you've got some back support, but you're not always going to have that. It's going to be more fatiguing. But also, your eyes are really close to a screen that's being magnified. So you're effectively looking at a diffuse lamp very close up. And you're not going to be doing that for hours and hours on end, I don't think. So eye strain could be a thing if you play too much. There are brightness settings for the screen. You can adjust the gamma on some games as well, but also at the console level, you can adjust the brightness of the screen. And that might help with some people. But I think it's just like getting used to a bright day when you go outside and the sun's out. You know, it takes a minute for your eyes to adjust. It might be similar to that, but yeah, I don't think you're going to be playing it for hours and hours on end. And that's fine, and that's absolutely fine because you don't want to binge on VR. I've found because the first day I had it, it took me an hour or so to get stuff running in between games. So, you know, I'd find something, I'd download it, I'd look into it, I'd explore the menus, the controls, play it for a bit, trial and error, mess about with the setup, that kind of thing. I'm getting used to the technology. And that was fine at that pace. You know, you have an experience, you come out of it, what was that? Think about it, you know, you need to take a minute in between VR gaming, I think. It says take breaks, and it's good advice. Because the next day, a friend came round, and obviously by then I was already au fait with the technology and switching between games, and they were all downloaded, so we could switch between games quite quickly. And I was showing him these games in fairly quick succession, and it did end up being a bit overwhelming for him. Now I started my friend off on kind of more simplistic games. I personally even haven't played any of the more hectic games, the ones that are infamously have more potential to give you motion sickness. I haven't even tried them yet, and I didn't show them to my friend. I started him off on some of the more some of the more easily grounded games. So what I mean by that is you're far less likely to get motion sickness if you play games where your physical movements in reality are directly correlated to physical movements within the game world. Okay, so static games are one example that do this well. You know, everything you do is replicated in the game and there's no unnatural movement. You know, the only dedicated VR game that I've had a little tiny bit of motion sickness with so far is the Luge, where your character's lying on a board and going down these hills really quickly, and you move your head to avoid traffic. And I've had a tiny little bit of motion sickness from that because there's a disparity between what your eyes can see and what your body expects to be happening in terms of movement. So when you're first getting used to this tech, you've got to kind of work yourself in, I think, gradually. I think that helps to take it easy when you first start. And yeah, my friend did get a little bit overwhelmed with playing these several games in quick succession, even though those were the ones that were pretty, you know, on the low side of kind of the intensity scale, you know. But because it's a lot to take in, it's a lot of new control methods and movement methods you've got to be aware of. you know, getting used to the comfort of the headset, that kind of thing. There's a lot of things to take in, the placement of the wire, you know. So start off with simple games is another tip I'd give. I've seen some people who've got the PSVR and then just played some of the more hectic games and had that motion sickness, and then it's put them off. And it's certainly a strong enough negative feeling, motion sickness, to put you off VR gaming. And that will be a real shame, because if you jump straight into these games like Rigs, or I think the driving games apparently can do it. I haven't played those yet. But some of the games certainly, because of the disparity between your real movements and the game movements, there's a potential for motion sickness. And if you get that feeling early on, you're going to be put off by VR. Yeah, and it would just be a real shame, because there's some beautiful, charming experiences to be had and lots of different ways to use the technology. Yeah, so start off with simple stuff. I mean, the heist, I had my friend play the heist, and he was enjoying it to a certain point, but there was, when he got to the shooting, he did find that a little bit confusing for reasons that I couldn't quite tell. Everybody's experience is going to be different, you know. So yeah, I'm rambling a bit on that point. I'd certainly say break yourself in gently, basically. Yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say in this video. I'm really enjoying it. I can say I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, that's all for this vid. There'll be more later though. I'll probably do some more gameplay vids as well for the crack. And see me what it's like playing VR in 360 bits. Alright guys, I'll see you later. Bye bye.